welcome everyone. Okay, so for those that don't know, my name is Eureka Smith, and I am the Executive Director of Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. We're so excited to have you all here in the room tonight, especially given the rain outside. And so I want to thank you for taking the time to come out. I think this evening's discussion is going to be a great one. And I would say for you as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, it gives you an opportunity to hear from some seasoned entrepreneurs and also ask your questions. So I would like to first of all welcome the Premier, the Honorable E. David Burt, JPMP, for agreeing. Not yet, Premier. I just want to say welcome, and I want to say thank you for agreeing to participate in this panel discussion. It's Fireside Chat. As you might know, or well know, he's an entrepreneur in his own right, and so from that perspective, I think he has a lot of things to say and opinions, and I think it's important for us to hear from him. And especially since he flew back home on a long flight, I'm sure, from Mexico yesterday. I'm really grateful for him to be here, so let's give him a round of applause for agreeing to be here. I also want to acknowledge in the room Minister Wayne Furbett, JPMP, the Minister for the Cabinet, who is in the room. Where's Minister Furbett? Minister Furbett, and I want to acknowledge his presence and say thank you for being here also. As you all know, it's November, so it's extra special for Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. It's the month where we go a little bit crazy, or a lot crazy, as I try to stand here feeling exhausted on our 200th event. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe like the 20th event. But it is Global Entrepreneurship Week, formally this week, not just here in Bermuda, but around the world in 170 countries. And so we just like to take the time out of our day-to-day work to acknowledge the role that entrepreneurs play in our community. And since we're very special people in Bermuda, of course, we dedicate the whole month to activities and events. Now, we do have a great set of panelists, and so I'd like to acknowledge them and their involvement in this fireside chat. So we have Mariko Thomas, Talani Bullfoot, Karen Franks, and we also have Nori Bashir, and then moderator would be Naval Grand. And so let's give them all a round of applause before they come up on stage. Okay. So I thought it would be important to start this discussion on the next big thing, identifying opportunities for entrepreneurs in Bermuda, by setting the context a little bit on what I term as the Bermuda landscape. Given the time, I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but I want to just leave you with some data and statistics to have it germinating in your mind while we have this discussion about entrepreneurship and our entrepreneurial ecosystem. Okay, so in 2018, BEDC conducted a survey of our stakeholders, and 77% of those stakeholders were business owners, but 77% of them were female and 50% were male. Obviously, it doesn't add up to 100, but I just wanted to highlight that in some categories there was a count twice. But what we have found in Bermuda is that we tend to see more women as entrepreneurs as opposed to men. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't an equal amount of men, but maybe just what comes through our doors. Interestingly enough, 84% of non-business owners indicated that they wanted to start a business within the next 2 years. And I thought that that was pretty interesting and exciting for our ecosystem. The top motivations for wanting to start a business, including noticing a market opportunity, 62%, always wanting to be a business owner, 55%, and needing additional income, 40%. So the last statistic speaks to necessity entrepreneurs. But we also wanted to find out what were the barriers of our stakeholders, and so what's preventing Bermudians from starting a business. And they said the high cost, lack of funding, the lack of business skills, knowledge, or motivation, regulations, laws, taxes, or red tape. 50% believe that bank account setup represented a significant challenge when wanting to start a business in Bermuda. And 44% felt that government requirements represented a significant challenge when starting a business in Bermuda. In 2018, we also held a survey of the general public to get their viewpoints on entrepreneurship and the business landscape. And 29% of the population indicated that they had owned a business, which, interestingly enough, that percentage was unchanged from 10 years earlier in 2008. 19% of the 29% of those businesses were still operating at the time. And the most popular reasons why a business stopped operating, according to the public, was that the business was either sold or it required funding or it was just too costly to operate. But also the population said that 30% of them were likely to start a new business in the next 3 years, which was actually an increase from the time that we did this survey 10 years earlier. So I feel like that actually speaks to a growing entrepreneurial ecosystem. We also asked the public what would they consider the barriers to starting a business and the support required in Bermuda. And the barriers were pretty consistent with our stakeholders. Lack of capital, access to loans, lack of experience, education, business knowledge, high rents, affordable locations as the barriers preventing, and the types of support that they indicated they needed were financial support, business advice, marketing, and advertising. Okay. So I just wanted to give you just a little snapshot of the Bermuda entrepreneurial ecosystem. I wanted to also provide to you some statistics on what I see and what BD sees as opportunity areas for Bermuda. Okay. So entrepreneurs really solve real-world problems, right? There's a problem, there's a gap in the market, there's an issue that probably an entrepreneur can solve. So the Bermuda Hospitality conducted a needs assessment in 2019, and one of the top areas or gaps was the current supply of hospitality workers is estimated to actually leave a gap. And so that's an issue that they saw that potentially an entrepreneur could solve. And they also estimated that the future demand of hospitality workers ranges from 3,039 to 3,300 approximately, depending on a best or worst case scenario, which is an increase of 7% to 16% compared to current demand. So there is a gap, and in the hospitality arena, they already know that we have to have some solutions to solve this gap that's being projected. Also, the roles that see the largest gap in supply and demand of hospitality workers are in housekeeping and food and beverage roles, representing 63% of overall gap. And the key factor impacting supply of hospitality workers is the 28% turnover rate for customer-facing hospitality workers, including housekeeping and food and beverage roles. Based on the sample population, 25% of hospitality workers are currently over the age of 60, which is really affecting the future supply of workers. And a key driver of the demand of hospitality workers is the 335 new hotel rooms, which are due to be available by 2021. 2 short years away. Okay, so let's look at technology. And these statistics are from the 2017 ICT profile by Department of Statistics. So the majority of Bermuda businesses surveyed, so 51% of them, did not outsource their ICT needs in 2017. Over a third of those businesses outsourced their ICT needs to local businesses only, while a little over 5% outsourced to overseas businesses. So is there an opportunity in the Bermuda market to fulfill those needs? In addition, 6.8% of the businesses outsource their ICT needs to a combination of both local and overseas businesses. Also from this survey, Bermuda's ICT trade deficit widened by 19% or $12.8 million in 2017. Is this an opportunity for Bermuda's entrepreneurs? This wider deficit reflected a 7.7% increase in the imports of ICT goods and services, as well as a 3.4% loss in receipts from exports of ICT goods and services overseas. If we look at the retail sector, in July 2019, the retail sale index indicated that the sales volume of apparel stores weakened 8.6% when compared to July 2018. And in value terms, sales revenues for apparel stores was 8.5% lower year over year. But what's more disturbing is that year over year, imports via courier increased 3.7 million to 14.5 million due to higher imports of medical devices, clothing, and jewelry. Okay. But in contrast, declarations by returning residents via the airport decreased by 0.3 million to 4.3 million. So even with a decrease, 4.3 million of importations is the high number of declarations. What are Bermudians spending their money on? Could we actually fill that gap with products that the Bermuda consumer wants? I don't think that this next category is a surprise to anyone, but I thought it would be helpful to highlight it for this discussion. So in 2016, Bermuda's elderly population increased to 16.9%, and by 2026, it's anticipated to represent close to 25% of the total population. Of all residents, 7% were 75 years and older in 2016, and by 2026, this proportion is anticipated to increase to close to 11%. The increase in the proportion of older seniors will likely increase the demand for purpose-built residential facilities with trained staff. From the 2013 Health Disparities Report, just over 1 in 3 adults said that they had been diagnosed with a chronic health condition other than hypertension or high cholesterol. Overall, 68% of Bermuda's adults were overweight or obese. Being overweight was affected by income, education, age, and employment status. 1 in 10 adults traveled overseas for medical services in the previous year, and older persons were more likely to do so. That same report said that just over 1 in 3 adults said that they had been diagnosed with a chronic health condition other than hypertension and high cholesterol. Oh, wait, I repeated that one. Sorry. 1 in 10 adults traveled overseas for medical services in the previous year, and older persons were more likely to do so. And also, 1 in 4 adults visited the emergency room at King Edward Memorial Hospital in the previous year. These are some real-world issues, guys. And then the last industry that I wanted to focus on is transportation. So the 2019 Transportation Green Paper indicated that the Department of Public Transportation bus fleet is aging and does not meet daily schedule expectations. Of the 105 public buses in inventory in 2018, 58 were greater than 10 years old, and 77 were licensed in that year. Of those 77 licensed, approximately 56 buses per day operated, and because of that, on average, 21 buses were out of service most of the time. And this, of course, led to a high number of bus cancellations. The public ferry service is also underutilized, as indicated by this report, and that residents, 77% of adults and less than 3% of students take a ferry to work or school, although this island is actually surrounded by water. The current ferry schedule primarily accommodates routes and times involving large volumes of passengers, mostly West End commuters and visitors. And so the East End residents and businesses and visitors feel left out without a dedicated ferry commuter service to that area from the east to the city of Hamilton, and also residents in the West End without the flexibility to actually return home after work at a later ferry time than what currently exists. This is RIP. Okay, so in my last few slides, I just wanted to highlight or pick up some real-world issues that I actually believe and that BEDC believes can be solved by entrepreneurs. I don't think that in any system it's just a reliance on the government to actually solve these problems. And I think in other countries, entrepreneurs are picking up and saying, we can do this, we can offer options and solve these real-world problems. So I thought it would be fitting to really leave this discussion or leave my part of this presentation with what has been actually happening in our growing ecosystem for entrepreneurs. So currently, there are more options, resources, and advocacy than ever before to facilitate entrepreneurship. And so, of course, we have BEDC in the room, but we also have our Enterprise Bermuda Incubator, which is a one-year incubation program. We've introduced the Summer Student Entrepreneurship Program to get our young people interested in entrepreneurship early. We have our partner, the Youth Entrepreneurship Initiative of Bermuda, which is a registered charity that focuses on entrepreneurship in young people. We have the Virtual Enterprise International Program, which is currently at the Cedar Bridge Academy and the Berkeley Institute, really providing entrepreneurship education in the school system. We have a new entry in the marketplace with regard to the Ignite Accelerator, which is a registered charity that provides an accelerator program for entrepreneurs, and they have a hub. Department of ICT Policy and Innovation have products and services focusing on entrepreneurship in the ICT industry in that space. We also have the BTA that provides products and services for Bermuda's hospitality entrepreneurs. We have the Bermuda Business Development Agency making the connection with regard to international businesses and getting them to come to Bermuda, but also a partner around the table connecting those international businesses with local businesses. We have the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce as an advocacy group for their members, their business members, the Business Development Unit in the Bermuda government, as well as the FinTech Business Development Unit. So there are more partners in this ecosystem than ever before, and I think that bears well for the future of Bermuda. There are also growing or evolving financial options that are on the table. So, of course, BEDC, we've expanded our products that we provide to the marketplace. Financial institutions are trying to do their part, and people have access to debt financing. The BIU Credit Union Co-op Society, I think, is an underutilized resource and an unknown financial institution for a lot of people, and they have started to now provide loans for their members to start businesses. There's also private institutions, which is this hidden network of high net worth individuals that are investing in local businesses. And the question is, how can we create a platform to access that? And with Ignite, I know we're trying to do that. Peer-to-peer lending, right? So people have some savings, they have money, they are willing to loan that to entrepreneurs if they have some support in doing that. And so they've approached BEDC to say, okay, well, would you be willing to vet these entrepreneurs? Could you guarantee our lending money? And I think in this environment, some of them can actually earn more income, interest income on that peer-to-peer lending than actually having that money in a financial institution. And then, of course, an emerging area is venture capital funds. And, you know, we would have heard in the last year the introduction of the infrastructure fund. But then there are other players trying to create funds to bring alternatives and options to entrepreneurs. So I'm going to end it with that. I just wanted to give you something to gestate on while these wonderful panelists actually have a discussion about the current landscape. Because for us, we see opportunities all around, and I think our job at BEDC is to help entrepreneurs develop a mindset to see these opportunities and to be able to access them. So what I would like to do is call our panelists up to the stage so we can start the actual fireside chat. Thank you, guys. So the session is going to be moderated by Neville Grant, who's the head of corporate banking for HSBC, but he also happens to be BEDC's board chair. We have the Premier, Mariko Thomas, and if you look in the brochure catalog, there's a bio on each one of our panelists. Nori Bashir, Karen Franks, Talani Bolford. Thank you guys for agreeing to be involved tonight. So I'm going to turn this over to Neville to lead this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erika. Welcome, panel. Thank you for coming, everyone. So I think Erika started out with a great quote. Entrepreneurs solve problems and create opportunities. So given our topic, we'll dive right into it. And we'll start sort of creeping death and start with you, Norman. What's your view on the next big thing, given technology is coming, all the things that Erika mentioned in the statistics? In your view, what's the next big thing?
You do it right in, eh?
Yeah, pretty much, right to
Chose me right off the bat. Thank you guys all for coming. How are you doing? My name is Nori Bashir, and thank you very much for that. And just, Erika gave a great speech just now and a good introduction, so we can give a round of applause to Erika and BEDC, please.
Well, let's switch seats as the moderator.
Okay, thank you very much. So, next big thing. That's a big question, and if I had the answer to it like right now, I'd probably not be sitting here.
Okay,
Right? I'd be investing in it, right? But if you just take a look around, and I did a bit of research prior to this because I like to at least prepare my mind for when we have speeches or when we're talking to individuals. I see the world that's changing in a way where technology is replacing the need for human labor, right, in a lot of spaces. So you find that, organizations are slimming down in sectors across markets, right? So I operate, if you guys don't know who I am, I run a company along with my business partner, Andrew Kirkpatrick. I run a company called Burnt House Productions. We do commercials and campaign work, and we do a number of cool things. Check me out on Instagram and all that kind of stuff if you want to. But for me, I think that one of the key areas where I see growth is in content creation, right? Everyone out here has some form of story to tell. Computers and technology, they can spit out information and they can calculate things faster than the human brain can now. They can calculate and tabulate a lot faster than we can, but what they can't do is really tell stories. And so what you find is that we are now guided by influencers, and we're guided by, everyone is glued to their phones looking at Insta stories and looking at a world through a lens where it's told through other people. So I see that as a part of the future, and hopefully I can capitalize off of that. There are a lot of other markets, and these guys are some esteemed individuals in those markets. But specifically in the creative realm, I see that there's a need, specifically in Bermuda, when you start to talk about tourism, and you start to talk about, getting our stories out there. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that I've seen out here that are doing things, and the only reason that I know that they exist is because they have an awesome story. So I think that is one of the growth markets, and I hope to see more people telling their stories.
No,
Great job,
extremely useful. Karen, go ahead. I see you.
Oh, great, thanks.
Chomping at the bit.
Oh, great, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Franks. I'm the author of Abigail's Dream Adventures. What was the question again?
Yeah, the question was, given your vantage point, and I think you can tell a bit about your story, and maybe talk about the next big thing as it relates to what it is that you're doing. So I won't steal your thunder.
Any budding authors out here at all? No, not at all. Okay. Well, I've actually taken my book from book to screen, and it's actually becoming at this moment an TV animated series for digital media with a celebrity cast. And thank you very much. and fantastic distribution deals. I have access to YouTube Kids through Google and through my executive producer. So for me, it's about talking about my product and looking at the platforms it sits on. It sits on 3 platforms: literacy, diversity, and dream building. So I can go into classrooms, and I go into schools, and I go into the Greater Toronto area and talk about my product. I saw there was a need for it. There was like 27 languages in just one of these schools. So I'm also building a multicultural educational platform, and we'll talk about that as well. But I saw the need, for kids to identify with themselves, looking at books with pictures that looked like themselves. And so I created Abigail, and Abigail goes into her own dream. She goes into a dream world. She meets her best friend, Pearl, who's a shade of white, and Abigail's a shade of brown. And they traverse through these dream worlds, and they meet children of different cultures and ethnicities and have fun adventures by way of bridging the gap of racial divide. So it's pretty huge. So imagine taking that into animation, and for kids from 3 to 6 to be able to identify with Abigail. It has lots of dream building. So I think, from my standpoint, I'm looking at like our youth and where we're going. I'm taking that, I'm going to be making loads of money, but I'm also bringing it back into my community and doing lots of stuff with that. So that's where I see me. That's specific to my my product and my situation.
That's excellent. I think it's
and I'll be bringing the celebrity cast here. I have a wonderful executive producer, Charles West in Atlanta. He's not only just doing the production of it, he's actually showing me as an entrepreneur, a woman, a Black entrepreneur, to keep my product and license it to different companies. So, we're looking at, if you're looking at Warner Brothers or you're looking at Lionsgate and things like that, you actually go out and license your product instead of just selling it like I actually was going to do in the beginning.
Right.
So I've learned a lot through that. Like I was talking to her before, I don't know anything about producing or whatever, but I've learned how to do it, and I've learned through that. I've created funding, private funding through it as well. So it's just a matter of, being an entrepreneur and just believing in yourself and just following your dream and putting one foot in step in the other. I know there's some days that you don't feel like getting out of bed, you want to pull the covers over your head, but, just press on, because you too can be up here and be just as successful as my wonderful panelists here.
Yeah. Well done. I think we'll probably try to dive into 2 of the other points that you raised a little later on in the discussion, but just so we can continue on with the creeping death. Premier, you're sitting here with multiple hats, not just leader of the free world, at least the world that we know of. But
or the free Bermuda.
Exactly. That's our world. But when I first met you, you were young upstart. You were back. You were challenging the world. Oh, still are. Yeah, and it's not meant to be an insult. My moderation days will be over very quickly. But you started out in technology. Talk to us a little bit about, coming back to Bermuda with your entrepreneurship hat on, diving into the world of entrepreneurship in Bermuda.
Well, I came back to Bermuda in 2003, back from university. And yeah, I built my first website / project to solve a problem in Bermuda. That in 2004, I think was called kitchensink.bm. And it was Bermuda's version of, you can't find it, I'm sure. Okay. Let's take it down, just like you won't be able to find Sousa.bm either. But that's a different story. But that was, to identify a problem that was here. And it was kind of, we had EMU, but there was a different way insofar as possibly doing reverse auctions and actually getting things sold. But you learn a lot through entrepreneurship, you learn a lot through failure. And that was something, my lesson in that was a very simple one, that Bermuda's market is very small. And what may work in other places on a grand scheme is very difficult to make work in Bermuda. And if you're going to get something to work from that aspect on a technology basis, then you have to find something that requires as little of your actual time and intervention as possible in order to support and to sustain it. So you have to build it well so it's literally completely self-managed, so that then you have to do minimal interaction, because at that point in time, we weren't able to build anything spectacular, and within a month, I found myself fielding and answering calls when I was like, this is not what I actually signed up for. This is not supposed to be the case. So, I mean, it gives a perfect and it gives a good example of certain things. But as you had mentioned, Neville, yeah, I think we did meet back when you were the head of the Bermuda Small Business Development Corporation. Yeah. Yes, back in 2003. And I was fortunate enough to be a child of two entrepreneurs. So I never saw my parents work for anyone. Right. And outside of about 18 months of my life, I never worked for anyone either until I got this job. That's what I was saying.
There you go.
Well, that much being said, I think that it's important, and one of the things Enrica said is about solving problems, and I think that if you're talking about what the next big thing is, the next big thing is solving some of the challenges which we see. Everyone knows that my bent is towards technology. I recognize that technology is certainly going to be the future. And the next big thing is going to be the democratization of finance. It's going to be the ability not to talk about your employer on a day job, but the ability of with the new technologies of which we're having, when you want to call them in a big umbrella fintech, if you want to talk in a small umbrella cryptocurrencies, but the ability to have programmable money, the ability to do so many different things that you were not able to do before, that is going to completely change the landscape, the store of value, the store of everything. So it can be so far as Nori paying people or Karen paying people to watch their content, or Talani paying people to use his internet, or Mariko paying people to eat his food, opposed to the other way around. I'm just saying, but that is the options and the ability to store value, the ability to change the paradigm right now where there are so many different things, where our data right now is being used by other companies to make money, whereas we can actually make money from our own data. So there's so many different possibilities of which will change. And I think that Bermuda will be an ideal proving ground. And I think if we're looking at what is the next big thing, it's about small projects and clearly working with a government that is willing to experiment on how you actually change the paradigm when it comes to the different ways of money and just the very concept of the storing of value, which is going to change dramatically over the next few years.
Again, each panelist, I guess they've read the speaking notes. They're touching on a lot of key points that we have to remember to come back with about Bermuda expanding to the world. We're talking about a change of complete mindset. We're talking about policy. We're talking about doing away with banks. So that's just very interesting stuff that we have to come back to. Now, Talani, I know you're a tech guy. So feeding right from one tech guru to the other, what's the story? What's the next big thing from your vantage point?
Well, my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 17 years old. I started by actually selling clothes. I was one of the persons who introduced hip-hop clothing to Bermuda. I made a lot of money very young. I didn't know how to manage it. You was actually my mentor. You was the person that helped get me started in this. And crashed and burned, spent all my money, went to Europe, came back to Bermuda for passion and an idea. The idea was just to make millions. Came back, okay, I need to make $1 million real quick, so I decided to work every job I could get. I worked security nights, I worked security days. Anything you gave me, I done. In 2006, I reached out to some of my friends that I met when I was living in the EU, and I said, look, I've got this vision to create a tech company. And we all sat down, had a conversation, flew to Europe. We went down this path to create this platform. Our platform we created on a newly formed company called AWS, that's Amazon Web Services, in 2006. We built what was then called a distributed platform, which is what you call cloud computing now. And we was actually one of the first partners. So we had been working with Jeff Bezos, Cindy Boy, since their inception. Our platform actually became the core of DHL's backend. So anything from 2008 to 2012 that you bought in via DHL came on our back end. We sold our company in 2012 to them for some pretty money. And I decided to look for the next big thing, and that's when we started to get into the IoT space, cybersecurity space, basically Internet of Things. That industry now is worth over $500 billion, so I'm bullish on that industry, cybersecurity, as well as the things that the Premier has been doing for Bermuda in terms of fintech. So we're knee-deep in a lot of different industries that actually merge together. So I'm bullish on anything to do with technology for Bermuda, but actually creating businesses in Bermuda that could scale internationally. So instead of us sending our money overseas to tech companies, we actually create platforms here, employ people here, and we build those companies out in other jurisdictions, and we bring remittance back to Bermuda. So that's pretty much our focus as a company right now, is to actually help Bermuda grow.
I mean, it's excellent. Again, that continuing theme you keep hearing about their capacity that's in Bermuda to both export to the world and then bring that technology back. So well done, Talani.
Thank you.
Sort of in our pre-discussion, we were talking, we were saving the best for last, and we were commenting the number of commas at the end of your name in terms of businesses, things that you've done. The Puma mentioned coming from an entrepreneurial family, and I know you have members of your family. So you're an entrepreneur at heart. Walk us through the multiple journeys, paths, businesses that you've been on.
I'll call out a couple of names.
Oh, is that long? You got to take out notes?
There's two sides.
You cited those too. Oh, boy.
8.5 by 14.
Both sides.
Yeah. So one, Bamboo Sushi, that happened up in Somerset. Barclay Institute Cafeteria, we were the first ones to operate the cafeteria when they moved to where they are now. Bermuda Arcade and Hot Dogs, that was on Queen Street. It was a bit of a fire hazard. It was a little place where you played a whole pile of arcade machines, had a little ice cream place in the front, hot dogs. Bermuda Medical Specialties Group, that's a new one with Dr. Basin, who's sitting over there, on by the Phoenix Group, is upstairs on the 3rd floor, and also down where PTAC used to be. Big Mama's was a restaurant that we did down in Flats, very short, but we did. Burger Shack just opened. Chit Chat. That was an experience. That was the bank giving us $2 million, or giving me $2 million when I was 30, and actually watching that fail in 3 months. The Clubhouse was an evolution of that, one of the names. 4-star, multiple locations, some open, some closed, but there's 4 of them now. Freddy's Food Court is a buffet that's open right now in work. Glazed Bakery is something that is, we've got 3 of those. They do cakes. We had something called the House of Corey in St. George's. We had Indigo, which was a dining room in Flats. We operate something called North Shore Bakery, which just sells bakery goods to grocery stores. Different name from Glaze. Runway Cafe at the airport. The Peacock Pantry at the aquarium. Snoqual Park Restaurant, Snoqual Park. United Family Shoes. I was there when it was going a lot. There was 4 of those. Probably the most notable for some people here would be that it was the only karate shoes and roller skates right there by the bus terminal. The island's first sneaker-only store.
That was cool.
United Video Center, that was kind of cool. That was out Court Street.
Oh, I remember that.
Arcades, not arcades, the video games. Nintendo.
Yes.
So let me tell you about Nintendo. There was no internet back then, so I used to go and buy the rental movies. So I got on a plane, go to New York, and I have a godson that lives in Brooklyn and in Bronx. And nearby him is a place where we bought these things. And my godson's father had this machine, and it's playing. Like, what is that thing? It's a Nintendo. Never heard of it before. It's like, this is kind of cool. We stayed up all night playing it. I bought one. I went to Toys R Us, bought it off the shelf at retail cost, bought it back, marked it up, put it on our shelf, and somebody bought it. I was like, ooh. I got on a plane. I went back and I got 3. That's all I could fit in my luggage. Brought them back, put them on the shelf, marked them up. They went. I was like, ooh. I got back on the plane. You see the story. Anyway, that was really, really fun. The Upper Crust, 4-star, flirted with changing its name, and the company, people didn't have it. They made us change it back. The Village Grill and Wild Wings. And why do I say all of that? I think we're talking about the next new thing. Mr. Freeman, you talked about the fact that there are opportunities. I think a lot of my intuition came from problems. 4-star was simple. Nobody was delivering pizza, and actually, I wanted a certain kind of pizza that wasn't in Bermuda. I could only get it in New York. I wanted to have that pizza in Bermuda. And then when I found out more about pizza, I realized I wanted to deliver, and the pizza that I loved was not going to be conducive to delivery. So we have a pizza that sells a lot, but isn't necessarily the pizza that I actually wanted. And that's a little bit of discipline, right? And there's the medical practice. The medical practice is really all about what Erika said. There's a huge opportunity in medicine. I spent 6 years, maybe 8 years, maybe 10 years, I guess, with Dr. Bazin studying it. So I can say big words like body plasmathography now. And I understand a lot about healthcare, which makes people, weirds people out that the pizza guy knows about healthcare. But, and also, of course, the pizza guy is involved in healthcare. That's even weirder for a lot of people. But the opportunities are absolutely everywhere. There are lots of problems. There's lots of gaps in the market. There are lots of things that do not exist here. Sometimes we need to create new. Sometimes there are just absences. And that thing that you love that you might have experienced in college may not be here, and maybe there's no good reason for why it's not here other than you didn't get started. Opportunities are everywhere, all around us, every day.
That sounded like a pause, so let me jump in right on that point. Just while we're talking, I think people are looking up and hearing stories. What struck me is the time that a lot of you have been in entrepreneurship, and during that time period, I'm sure it has not been all roses. You've had to have some challenges. So sometimes the disconnect between a great idea and sort of execution, from idea concept all the way through to execution. Well, just while you're talking, you named a couple of entities or businesses that didn't last long. Walk us through some of the challenges and how you recover from that. How do you move from idea to execution to recovery?
Sure. The first big lesson for me probably was Chit Chat, because it was a $2 million oopsie, if I can call it an oopsie. And where I didn't go to college, this was very quickly my school fees right here. It was a 10-year lesson, because that's how long it took to pay it all back. And what actually happened is we invested in a concept that did not exist in Bermuda. It was station shopping. It was a place where Mr. Chicken is currently on Queen Street. It used to be Woman's Shop, and we converted it into a place called Chit Chat. Beautiful place, but it was just too early. People didn't understand the concept, and there was no food court in Bermuda for anybody to transition through what is a food court to now what is this new place.
Right.
And as a result, we tried to flip it and flip it and flip it, and it was just unflippable to the point that we just had to let it go. No coming back from that other than just pay all the bills back. Something like, a good example right now is with Burger Shack. We opened it up very quietly last week, and we made some, we made some really interesting mistakes. 3. One, we lost sight of the fact that in Bermuda, typically everybody that sells a burger sells one-size burger, and we actually had more than one. 2, our menus weren't ready, so we did a quick black and white menu, and it was two-sided, but the front side looked like it was complete, so people didn't look at the back. And we put the smallest burger first on the menu. So everybody came in, bought the smallest burger, and went nuts online over what the heck is that piece of crap, because it's so small, right?
Right.
And we're like, what's going on? And we're just like, oh, that's bad. So we've got to step back and rejig our menu, not rejig it, but just re-explain to people who we are and what we are. And that's an interesting piece too, because people have expectations sometimes that they put on you, which you have to choose whether you accept. And there were comments around what Burger Shack is, and what Burger Shack is for us is I am at my core 4-star in the restaurant world. And 4-star is a delivery company that also just so happens to provide pizza, but we are a delivery company first. In fact, I would scrap all that and say we're a marketing company that actually does delivery, and by the way, provides pizza. That's a whole lot of another entrepreneurial conversation. But Burger Shack also is meant to deliver. And in doing that, there are confines in our kitchen, in our space, and the amount of speed that we need to leave our building to be able to get to you in a certain amount of time, and that may change the nature of what we can offer on our menu or not. So while somebody might want a gourmet burger, we can't provide it because we decided we're going to be a delivery company rather than a gourmet burger company, and that might change how the relationship we have with customers, and could affect our success if we get it wrong.
It's a great point. And again, this is failure is temporarily sidelined until you get something more strategic. So again, this is this continuous learning.
But it's an interesting point to note, if I might. And it's a very interesting thing, because when you talk about the amount of failures that have had, one of the key things as being an entrepreneur is recognizing, and the quicker you recognize that something is going wrong, and have the courage to fix and to transition and to not be stuck on where you are, because that's how you get to failure. And I think Mariko's experience is that he's been through it, so he can identify and quickly change. And that's something that is incredibly important for entrepreneurship, because you might think you have the idea right, you might think you have it all mapped out, and something might be off. The stubborn person will say, no, I know what I'm doing. The non-stubborn person, the person who's experienced as an entrepreneur, like, we need to make sure we change, we need to make sure we make the adjustments, because you don't stay in business for a long time unless you make those changes.
That's right.
If I can add just on that, a lot of what I have had to experience personally, like with people really close to me, it's really around ego and emotion. And you cannot make emotional decisions when you're making business decisions. You just cannot. And a lot of people do not understand that difference. And your ego has no place in the room because you can take your ego right to your grave, which is where your business is going to be with you when it dies, because nobody cares.
That's right.
The only thing that matters is what the customer says they're willing to accept, or what you're able to get from that customer that they're willing to accept. Nothing else matters.
Excellent. Go ahead, Nori.
And I'll piggyback. Everyone's piggybacking. I think at the end of the day, the biggest failure is not being prepared or willing to fail, right? So a lot of people have ideas that just fail in their head, right? And so when you have people like Marika, and I'm sure everyone on this table, on this stage right now, has had an idea and just said, look, I'm going to go for it, right? And not every single idea works, you know, and I would testify to that, you know what I mean? I've had a lot of failures. But in my mind, I look at failure not as failure itself. I think true failure is just death, right? It's when you can't do anything more. Failure is just learning, right? So if a kid wants to walk, they have to fall down a bunch of times before they can take proper steps, right? If you want to run, you know, you got to be able to walk before you can run. And all of those things are learning pieces in between. Now, those learning pieces can be costly. Some, you know, he had $2 million, but $2 million in 10 years that's epic.
Painful.
You know, that's for someone, you know, most people won't see $2 million in their lifetime.
That's right.
Right? So if you can pay back $2 million in 10 years, then that is an epic story. That's not a story of failure. That's a story of perseverance.
Yeah.
And I think that entrepreneurship is not your failures, it's your perseverance through failure and not being afraid to fail. And I think that is obviously why a lot of you guys are here. It's to take a step. Maybe some of you are entrepreneurs. Maybe you guys are looking to be entrepreneurs. But we won't find the successes unless you're willing to fail first.
And again, that's why I think I was going to drag Talani in this a little before, because he was talking a little about this in our pre-discussion, is, you know, what are the steps that you go through once you have fallen down, once you have lost $2 million? What's that mental recalculation that you have to go through to get back and start again?
Well, I think from experience now, looking back when I was starting very young, and I remember the first conversation I had with you when I pitched this idea to you on the street. This is a family friend, and he said, come talk to me. I'm the manager of this thing called Bermuda Small Business. And I went the very next day and talked to him. I pitched my idea. Needless to say, I left the room in tears because he was like, that's not going to work, right? But the thing
bringing
That happened to you
endorsement.
as well?
yeah, I was
me.
in tears, literally. But the thing I learned about myself, I'm ultra competitive. I literally was standing on the street. That's me, guys, by LOM. And I said, what? I ain't never going to let that guy do that to me. I literally came back every single day and just kept refining the plan.
That's right.
So I think with failure, things that's come before failure is fear. People have fear in their mind and their heart, and I think that's what destabilizes them from trying. So what I tell people, anyone who's aspiring to entrepreneurship, learn yourself, know who you are, and start to redefine who you are in terms of what you want to be. It doesn't make sense you trying to take on risky ventures if you're not tolerant for risk, right? You do not have to jump into entrepreneurship full-time and say, you know, I'm going to leave my job. There's many different ways you could have a job and be an entrepreneur at the same time, but you have to know yourself. So for a person like myself, I want to win it all, and so I'm willing to lose it all. So with that, obviously, I've had a lot of failures, but I looked at each, what you will call, some people call failures as stepping stones. So that knowledge enabled me to build onto other knowledge. And so as I started to build other companies and be involved in many different entities, I was able to take that knowledge and build on top of that. And so I've never really tasted what some people perceive as failure. I just take them as learning events that help me improve and become better. And I talk to people all the time and say, you know, you got to really look at failure, and do you have failure or do you have fear in your mind? And most people, if they're honest with themselves, it's not failure they're worried about, it's fear. So if you could separate that fear from the task at hand, you could pretty much achieve anything at any time.
No, that's perfect. And just to defend myself, my view is, if I can talk you out of your business idea in a couple of minutes, then you have no business being an entrepreneur.
Indeed.
Because there were darker times than me that are coming. When you're sitting in your quiet corner, having contemplated the loss of $2 million, having contemplated potential next steps, challenges, obstacles. So if you're struck down by a 30-second conversation with me, then you have to reevaluate. So that's my shameless plug
Is that
to
your
get off
clause?
the, so,
Your out clause, yeah.
yeah. But Karen, talk to us a little about your journey is slightly different because you're talking about a media that's different.
Yeah.
You're talking about something that's probably not as mainstream as some of the other business ideas.
Yeah, and that's not here. And I was thinking about looking at failures. I think, when I had my publishing company say, take the book from book to screen, because I'm Canadian as well, I took that opportunity to go overseas and to pitch where their market is, because there is no market here. And, it takes a long time to submit your project and for them to review it. And then, most of the time their slates are busy. They've already been booked out. So I was losing out quite a bit. And so I'm very impatient. So I just decided to create my own company. So I have another company called Dream Tales Inc. in Toronto. Went to Vancouver, Victoria, BC. My granddaughter was born, spent some time over there, meeting with people doing broadcasting policy, chairman of animation houses, just getting absorbed in the whole thing. Went home and turned on the TV, catching up with my shows. And does everybody watch Wendy Williams? They know Wendy Williams here? And I turned it on, and they had John Amos on, and he had come out and he'd written a book, A World Without Color. And I was like, wow, he's an author too now. It's incredible. And he then started talking about an animated series that he was involved with in Atlanta. And that's why I said, okay, so I'll shift my thoughts from, my mind from Canada to maybe the US. And so I reached out on LinkedIn. He came right back. He called me immediately. And I was over there in the next few months. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, I'm in Las Vegas at a licensing conference with them all. And I'm sitting next to John Amos, the father from Good Times, having scrambled eggs. In walks E.G. Daly, Tommy Pickles from the Rugrats. Anybody know about the Rugrats?
Yep.
Yeah. She walks in with her agent. And there was a few other celebrities. It was my executive producer's birthday, as well as we were there for a conference. And so my life has changed. There are still times when I come home, I work from home, and I'm totally focused. When I get to do events like this and talk about my project, I get excited about what I've done, but most of the time I'm focused and in the trenches. And there'll be some days where I'll just stay in bed, but I generally write from bed too, so I'm still working. Yeah, I don't really believe in the whole failure thing. Like when you get down, that you can only go up, and that's the time when you think about switching the idea and going another way, contacting somebody that's in the industry. But there's only one way to go, and that is up and to succeed. Yeah.
That's a useful. Again, that's I think what has shown through pretty clearly across all of the entrepreneurs and what they've described in terms of the journey is the whole perseverance and determination to see the end. So well done. Premier, I'll touch on it because we started to talk about it a little bit, is one of the things that has been somewhat of a stumbling block for entrepreneurship, new ideas, and new generation is the financing piece. So, and we kind of battled back and forth around what those models might look like. Maybe we can start to get the panel's view, starting with yourself, on what are the concepts that we need to consider when we start to talk about financing or opportunities to get financing for your business ideas?
I think that financing certainly is important. It's always one of the things that constrains us in Bermuda in regards to having the access to the finance and start business. But I think that there's also another way to look at it. And I know that you, Neville, will have heard me speak about this often, and it wouldn't be a surprise to others, that one of the things we also have to consider is that in Bermuda, we like to do things ourselves. And the market is too small for multiple players in the same type of thing. So we have to do a better job of working cooperatively, of figuring out who has the same ideas, whether it's sharing assets, whether it's sharing space, which means that you have to have less capital, and therefore you have to have less money in order to pay back. That's, I think, what's important, and that's why I'm so excited about the cooperative initiatives which is being done by the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, and also the opportunities that the new types of financing models will be able to promote. But I think that's important because it is Bermuda, people say, in general, it is a very expensive market. But as an entrepreneur, you can bootstrap yourself and start very small, or you can hamstring yourself with doing a lot of things. And sometimes we go and try to go really big and try to get all the assets and do this and all the rest, whereas you might just want to start a little bit smaller, do something rented, something shared, et cetera. And I think that that's a better way to look at it, and to make sure that your idea is actually working.
Yes.
Make sure that there's actually a need for that inside the market. Identify that so you can continue to grow and build. I mean, I hear the story about Rico talking about, you know, the Nintendos, and back then it was the old Nintendo Entertainment System playing Excitebike and all the rest.
That's right.
I remember that. But the thing is that you have to make sure that it's really there. The market is really there, and because the market is so small, what works really well in Bermuda, and what I found from experience, is just to make life easier for Bermudians. And that works across the board, but you have to find those particular pain points. But when it comes to the issue of financing, clearly there's the matters of the direct lending at the BEDC that they have for, you know, $20,000 microloans. And I'm not going to say that $20,000 is enough to start any business, but by and large, it's enough to give you enough of a space to find out whether or not your idea works.
right.
Now, unless you're trying to, you know, build a large restaurant, but at the same point in time, we're talking about food service, we're talking about offering shared kitchens so that individuals don't have to have their whole kitchen, so they can use it at various points in time. There's lots of examples of shared assets, and I think that that's something more that entrepreneurs in Bermuda need to work on. I mean, I'm not going to tell Nuri to share his camera, but Nuri doesn't use his, I understand, but Nuri doesn't use his camera 24 hours a day.
That's right.
Like, that's just a fact. I mean, and so when we start talking about the need to start thinking in a different aspect, I think that more entrepreneurs will be a little bit more comfortable in taking that risk if you're doing it with other people. You don't have to share fully the entire capital charge and paying that money back yourself. The last thing I'll talk about is, which people would have heard me say recently, was this issue of how in Singapore they allow people to access their private pensions, a small portion of them, in order to fund certain things. And my view is very simple. We have forced savings in Bermuda that have been going on for quite some time.
Right.
And this is a $3 billion pot of money. Now, a lot of that, this is not the government pension, this is the private pension. A lot of that, in other countries and other jurisdictions, they give people the option to access a small portion of it. And so I think that when we're talking about, and historical, because historically, the way that you get access to financing is that you might just, you know, have a guarantee from your parents' house.
That's right.
But what if your parents don't have a house? What if you don't have someone in your family with that? What do you rely on? And then and so you have to recognize that there are other assets that persons can use, can either borrow against, or can actually have access to in order to either collateralize what they have or in order to look forward to what they have. And I think that the government is going to make those more accessible because capital is a problem. But I want the entrepreneurs listening to make sure to understand, don't feel the need to try to come up with this massive idea and put a huge amount of capital, because ideas can start from very small way. You can get yourself to positive cash flow relatively quickly and build on top of that, as opposed to saddling yourself with big debts and big monthly payments at the very beginning.
It's a great point about organic growth. And so for the other panelists, I'm going to add a slight twist to that, because what the Premier is suggesting is a bit of a cultural mind shift as well, because we haven't historically worked well together, and that's a generalization. And so that involves a little bit of trust, a little bit of change of mindset and thinking, the whole concept of co-ops, the whole concept of shared assets. Talk to us a little bit about that. I won't pick anybody in particular. I'll see who has an affinity to dive in.
I mean, I can't talk about co-ops and shared spaces, but I can talk about organic growth and humbling yourself. So, you know, there's the concept of, you know, he who seeks knowledge begins with humbleness. I know that when I started out in the production realm, a lot of people, because I was a banker, right? If you look back 6 years, yeah.
There's hope for me
Yeah,
yet.
I was a banker. I worked with this guy, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I said I was leaving the bank, you know, I told my colleagues, I'm leaving the bank. I got my last bonus check or whatever it was. I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to start a production company with this guy, Andrew Kirkpatrick. He has Burnt House Productions, and we guys are going to go do cool stuff. Most everybody, I think, while they were eating cake, they were looking at me and saying, this guy's crazy. This guy is retarded. You know, he's leaving a stable job, and he's leaving income, that's guaranteed income, to go do something. But I was a person, like I think many of the panelists here, who was raised in a family where both of my parents were entrepreneurs also. So I never saw my parents work for anyone else. And so it was never my plan for myself to work for anyone. I never wanted that. I did it as a means to an end. So when I started out, I wasn't the greatest photographer. I wasn't the best photographer. I didn't know how to use a video camera or anything like that. I could take a couple good pictures or whatnot. And there was this guy named Matthew Binns. He had a company called Epic TV. And he was looking on the internet for production companies, found Birdhouse Productions, the videos, the cliff diving videos. And he said, hey, look, guys, I'm coming to Bermuda and I'm shooting a campaign for Apple. And I need someone on the ground to help me out with logistics. Now, us not being, producers or anything in that realm, we were like, well, should we take on this task? We don't know anything about it. We don't know, no clue. And Andrew and I just said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's work with this guy. So he came down to the island. He needed, I think it was about 70 employees locally. He needed transportation. He brought down an award-winning director. And we really were immersed in, for the first time, in huge-scale production. And from outset, I didn't even know what production was, but was tossed right into the deep end. And we took on the project, and we made a fair amount of money doing that project. But more than money, we learned that it's okay to just service people that are probably better than you, right? And so production, if you really think about it, we help people that are really great photographers, really great videographers, and some of the best people in the world we've done production for. And what I was talking about with regards to the stories and being humble, sometimes you don't have to be the A person. You can help the A person while you become the A person, right? And so service side is an important side. Erika talked about services that are needed for hospitality, like maids and cleaning services and all these things, and you would have a tendency to turn your nose up to helping people.
Right.
And I think that organic growth, and there's a lot of money in service, because technology, for a lot of us, you start talking about Bitcoin, you start talking about banking service, you start talking about all these things, and then your eyes just gloss over. Even when you start going through statistics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You go through statistics and you're looking at these things and you're saying, I don't understand this stuff.
Right.
Realistically, but I do know how to talk to you.
Yes, sir.
I know how to be nice, and I can generate income, and I can teach other people to be nice, right? And I can manage other people in being nice and providing good services. So I think that there is a growth market in the service side. And I think that, I'm not sure if this is answering any of your questions.
No, it is. Because
But-
the difference between service and servitude, but you're getting there.
Exactly. So- that was a slight, wasn't it?
No. It's only
I think-
designed to make sure the audience will feel
I
awake.
think he did a great
Yeah,
job,
yeah,
because
no,
I
yeah.
was going to digress into that too. And
Yeah.
when I go up there and I work and I go to the schools, are you guys listening?
No,
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, we're there.
So, and I go to the schools and I always make sure that they're public schools or kids that are disadvantaged, and I go there and they've never met an author before, and I get to go in and talk to these kids. And for me, it's not about the money. And even, Erica's like, okay, how much money did you make off those books this time? I'm like, I'm just giving them away because, you could see the glow in their eye, the spark in their eye. They're excited about the product. And so that's what I find. And I'm always there to talk to anybody that's an aspiring author, or even to talk about the business that I'm in, because I think it's about giving back. I mean, the main question that my executive producer asked me when I first had that over an hour call with him, the first time he called me from Georgia, it was like, why are you doing this? What do you want to get out of this? And I had the answer right away. For me, it was about leaving a legacy for my grandchildren. But since then, it's about being of service. And I think that is the most important thing that you always have to bring back. I mean, a lot of people go out there and they go to Africa and they go to other places, and that's wonderful. But for me, it's about making the money and then bringing it back to my community and being a part of it. And that's why I'm creating a multicultural educational platform, because there are so many different things that we should be learning as adults, but as children, and to teach them from 3 to 6 to respect one another, and about inclusion and the benefits of sharing, and just because you look differently, you're not supposed to be treated differently. I mean, they get it. I go out there and I talk to these kids, and they get it. They talk about respecting each other on the playground and to play nicely with each other. So I'm building this multicultural educational platform with these wonderful people in Bermuda. I have one of my stakeholders there, Crystal Clay, She has certification in diversity and inclusion from Harvard.
Yep.
And, when we launch it here, it's going to be so exciting. I would love for you to be a part of it as well. And developing programming for children as well, and then also looking to do an aging platform. So, like the Premier said, it can start as a small thing, but right now my thing is coming to life and has so many different tentacles on it, and I'm busy because it's just me. And I do delegate a bit, but no one does it as good as you do, right?
Oh, never. Talani, I see you're chomping at the bit.
Well, I think one of the things, going back to what the Premier said and the question you asked, is Bermuda, we have a culture of me, myself, and I. So when people talk about raising money, they're looking to retain as much ownership as possible. And I think financial literacy is something that every entrepreneur should learn because it's a bedrock of running any successful business. Like myself, me and my partner started a financing company a few years ago, primarily to manage all the different things we're in because our industry is growing so fast. So we created a fund, so to speak, internally. They say, well, we want to give in all these different directions. How do we get in all these different things? I'm one person, so I can't be involved. So what I do is we put our money behind other entrepreneurs that's into similar industries. So we put our money behind you and put our expertise behind you as well. So we build a backbone, and in Bermuda, that culture still doesn't exist. Coming from the tech scene, all tech companies in the world, any major one, primarily they collaborate because we work with a shared intellectual property at times. So for us, it's normal to work together, even though we're competing in certain sectors, but in the back, we're still competing and working together at the same time. In Bermuda, I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to embrace it because we've worked with a few entrepreneurs here recently, and they've came to us and we came back with a term sheet, and they're like, what, you want all that? And they couldn't see the vision. I'm like, well, we're going to put our money behind you. We're going to put our knowledge behind you. We're going to help get you customers, right? So basically, we're putting you on a path to success. And if we work well on this, we might have something else we could work with you on in the future. You see? And I think a lot of people here, because the environment is so competitive, it's me versus you, they don't understand that. Like, I've learned very, very quickly in my entrepreneurial journey, I couldn't do it all.
Right.
So I was quick to partner with persons like yourself who had maybe more capital than me or had a strategic position that I didn't have. So I was looking at you, not for this position, but I wanted to build a relationship with you for the next project I was trying to do. And that takes a collaborative mindset that I like to see fostered more in Bermuda. So a lot of the cooperative measures that the Premier is talking about, that actually becomes a bedrock. But entrepreneurs have to be willing to say, you know what, this idea I have right now, it may be great, but if I don't have the resources to execute it, it's going nowhere. So I might have to give a majority stakeholder to get it off the ground.
I agree, and again, not trying to pull it out again, but you hear the consistent theme that comes out. Nori talking about work with the A guy until you can become the A guy. The whole discussion about the Premier Corporation, working together, enabling, partnering, sharing. Karen talking about leveraging off people with more expertise. Mariko is the knowledge guy, so he doesn't have to share or build with anybody. And then Talani talking about learning and picking up. So again, I am conscious as well. We have a lot of questions, a lot of content here, but we've assembled a pretty awesome team on the table from this side going over. But what we wanted to do is take a couple of minutes.
One little thing.
Sure, far away.
We have a number of employees. It's probably about 150. And whenever I see somebody young and I ask them where are they going, what they're going to be doing in 4 or 5 years from now, sometimes it's through school, sometimes they're here for a hostile part-time job, what I notice is that when we try to push somebody towards management, learn a little bit more, sometimes they're conflicted between why that should happen. And we're talking about entrepreneurship, and we're talking about learning and all these things, right? I find that we need to also encourage us, our families, our people, our kids, our significant others, to step up and take on more responsibility. Because once you learn something, nobody can take it away from you.
Interesting.
Ever take it away from you. Yeah. And I find that people are quite closed, and they're not open to learning because they think that learning also is more work. And sometimes it is. And sometimes you've got to put in that work. And I find it interesting that we would be prepared to pay to send our kids to a very high-fluting school, and I mean a low-fluting school, and not necessarily cause, I mean, we've trained so many people, they should almost pay us.
That's right.
But they don't see it that way. They don't see it as you get an education. In an environment like McDonald's in the United States, they have incredible training, but yet people make fun of McDonald's. And this is not even about me and my restaurants. It's about entrepreneurship sometimes could be where you are at work. And if you don't step forward and take on that next responsibility, if you don't step up and take on that, stay a little bit later and ask questions of that senior that's around you, that person that is someplace that you're not, you are robbing your family of money, yourself of money. You're not even understanding that you're not even open to the opportunity of the next big thing because it's sitting right next to you sometimes.
And this is that whole concept of employees with an employer mindset.
Indeed.
Or an entrepreneurial mindset.
Indeed.
So a great, fantastic transition
And
to
Neville,
questions.
sorry, and I've always wanted to, I started the business because I wanted to be my own boss and make money. And I think that's, the concept for maybe everybody here. But as I've gone along, I've realized that it's about purpose too, and it's about living a purposeful life. That you believe in your product, you live your product, and when you get your mindset around that, it comes and it flows easier. Everything comes to you because you're living it, you're breathing it, and you believe in it.
Yep.
And that's one thing, if you don't take from any of these guys up here tonight, because I'm the only girl holding this down, believe in yourself and live a purposeful life through your business. Because if you don't believe in it, nobody else will. You can't convince anybody else to, help you finance it or whatever. But
I mean, that's a true lesson in
Yeah.
life, right? Getting paid to do what you love to do. So
Yes.
I'm going to try to get to questions real quick unless another panelist cuts me off real fast. So look,
Sorry.
And any other, any questions? Because we still have some content. If you're shy or you don't have a question, then we'll dive in with our learned panel. But any questions?
How you guys doing? I'm actually a business owner myself. I own a cafe. And I've always been that guy that everybody sees as a food person. However, I'm a very ambitious individual. My question for you guys is if you have an idea for something that maybe it's not what you are an expert in, and I know you spoke a little bit about this, how would you go about, gaining that knowledge or going out there to find somebody who is that expert to, help you along with that idea that maybe you might not be in that skill set,
Yeah,
I
I'll
can
take that
answer.
one.
Okay.
Because I'm in the restaurant business. So every time I talk about medicine, people look at me like they heard that dog that makes a high-pitched noise. They go,
Scooby-Doo.
because it's not normal. But my skills are transferable. I do multi-location, multi-unit management. I don't operate restaurants. Every time somebody calls me a restaurateur, I giggle inside. Because I never set out to be a restaurateur. I was just solving a problem. And at that point in time, it was a restaurant. And then I thought it was going to take 3 years. And I'd go on and do other stuff. It's just so happened to be 30. So you define yourself. As you walk down the street, people are going to try and define you. You have to figure out how you're going to deal with that. But to answer your other question about how do you get access or open yourself up to learning and exposure from others, I have argued with Dr. Bazin probably for 8 to 10 years before we created this idea of a medical practice. You've got to network, you've got to read, you've got to travel. I can tell you I've been to about 12 different medical conferences. Medical conferences where doctors are there. And I'm probably, maybe sometimes the only not doctor. I don't even know half the time that multi-syllable word, but I'll look it up and I'll figure it out. So you've got to figure out how to throw yourself in there because the only person that's in your way is you. And everybody else is going to find a different way of getting there. But you're competing against somebody. So how long you want to take?
Yeah, I think,
Get on with it.
Do you want to say?
I think that's 100% correct, right? Networking, there's a guy I used to work with, Lloyd, that came down from England.
That's right.
And he used to always say, Nori, look, there's one letter difference between networking and not working. So if you're not networking, you're not working, right? And I really, really, really appreciate that because if you look at all these individuals and some of the individuals that are inside this room now, a lot of what they get as business or what they start out in the business realm with is knowing people, talking to people, and like we talked about, if you name an industry right now, I can name somebody that's probably doing good in it. So the question is, how do you get to that person?
That's right.
Right? And how do you network with that person? And there's a certain set of steps that you can take to get there. There's no one that's untouchable. You can get to just about anybody. It's just about your willingness to put yourself out there to get it. And You say people think of you as the kitchen guy, the restaurant guy. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with people having a false perception of who you are. Sometimes that's to your benefit. Sometimes you don't need everyone to understand or to know exactly what your moves are in the background. You just need to know the right people to get to get the things done.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what people call you or what they think you are. You just do what you need to do to be able to get what you want at the end of the day.
That's great advice. What's your name again? Jalen. I was basically going to say, just find a SME, a subject matter expert. Find someone that you kind of admire that's done the same thing as you've done, and then also marketing. Get somebody to highlight who you are, what your business is, what you're doing. You've gone from this to this, and this is how you're seen. But I would definitely say, find someone that you can kind of mentor under or over or whatever in the business that you're doing, and learn a lot from that. Networking is a lot of work, and you're also doing your cafe business as well, so that's a lot. But you just get in there and just do it, the hard work.
I just wanted to ask you a question. How do you rate your drive? Well, the reason I asked you that, I have a saying, I've been saying this to myself since I was a child. My work ethic is second to none. When you're sleeping, I'm working. When you're partying, I'm working. So you can imagine everything you do, I'm working. And the reason I'm saying that, I've always put myself on a path, and that path is with purpose. And so once you're on your own path, that purpose, you'll meet like-minded people on that path. Of course. Like you're at an event right now with people that are part of a broad network, Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. I've been working with these guys since they was Bermuda Small Business. So like, for example, they introduced me to a young man recently. He was 16 years old. He was 15 at the time. He had a business that he was trying to get off the ground. And they knew a business that we have dormant right now that was in his wheelhouse. So they introduced us, and now he's going to run that company. We're going to invest in him. So that was a way of using this facility, these persons in this room to do it. So if your ambition is to be a serial entrepreneur, a lot of the times you don't have to be the expert. Partner with somebody who is. Know your skill set. Like what my colleague was saying, everyone has their skill sets in business. A lot of business skill sets are transferable, and some things are not. So if you don't have that strength, you go in and research or partner with somebody, and it's easy just to walk up to somebody and say, hello, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. And if someone's serious as an entrepreneur, looking at another entrepreneur, they'll see it. They'll see it in the eyes. Because I have people that stop to me every day and say, can I speak with you? Can I connect with you? And I say, yeah, here's my number. And I knew that 99.9% chance they're not going to call me, they're not going to come see me, nothing. So I'm willing to give it up because I know most people are not going to do it. Now that 0.1% who does it, I already know I'm struck gold because I know that I got to drive. And that's what I look for. And if I want to work with somebody or connect with you.
Yeah.
It's a great point. There was one question that we had.
We have two over here. Do you want to? Oh, no, you're good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Marjorie Keynes, and this question is directed to Premier Burt.
I must apologize. People have seen me up here being very rude in my phone. There's a by-election going on today, and I'm a party leader, so I kind of have to check in, but you have my undivided attention.
You have a country to run, sir. I would like to know, how often do you have your lunch and chats with the public? I've actually tried to have an appointment with you, and in the background, I've actually met with the Minister of Health and also the Finance Minister. I have a product that I believe that will help our healthcare system.
Okay. Well, to answer that, I'm sorry that you didn't get into our lunch and learns, or our chat and choose, not our lunch and learn, our chat and chew. However, I will ensure that the next one we have, you will be there. Yes, absolutely. We're supposed to do them once a month. Sometimes they happen once every other month. But absolutely. But I'm happy to arrange something. And of course, I'm the minister responsible for the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, so happy to have a chat at any point in time.
We love plan to action. That's one of the benefits of having an entrepreneur and a policymaker and the leader of the country as a representative in the management for BEDC. It's fantastic. So excellent. Any other questions or actions that you need us to take?
Good evening. So my question is, where do you find the confidence to start a business in this climate where you see businesses closing monthly? And sorry, two-part question. is it smart to put your business idea on hold and wait for a better climate, or is that just the fear?
I'm happy to answer that question.
Sure, fire away.
Tackle that one time. I get faced with this question all the time, of course, as persons have different views of how the economy works and how the economy functions. And the one thing that I always say whenever I'm confronted with people talk about business closures, I say that Trimmingham's close in the middle of a boom. And the fact is that good business ideas will work. And it's a question of making sure you have that right business idea. A lot of times the challenge in our economy, and you've heard me say it before, that a lot of people will, pick the low-hanging fruit. So I'm not trying to, of course, there might be some chuckles about different recordings which happen, but the athletic club, and I'm not trying to talk poorly about the athletic club, but the athletic club was competing against newer and better gyms that had invested in their resources, and that's what will happen. So I look at it from the perspective of if your product is better than what is offered in the market, and if you believe that you have the space, go for it, because that's what's necessary. If it is a better offering than exists in the market right now, it will succeed, and if it's not, it will fail. But I don't think that because consumers are more discerning now, because there are more options, because before, where Mariko could mark up a Nintendo 64, now or a Nintendo Entertainment System, now someone could go on Amazon and see the actual price. So it's a different market, so you have different things. So you have to make sure that what you're actually providing works, but I wouldn't recommend it all to wait, because the fact is that there are businesses that are currently inside of the market right now which are operating inefficiently, and if you can build something better, more efficient than works, you should go ahead and strive for it.
I think also that better is a relative term too in that vein. So sometimes you look at some shops and you say, well, how does this one stay open when this guy's got better stuff, right? And in Bermuda, we have people like people, Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's not about what you have, it's how you have it, if that makes any sense. So your business not only has to be a better product, because I've had people sit in my office that say, hey, look, this website works way better than that one. And you could do this, you could do that, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this, you could do that. And then you say, okay, put it out there, right? They put it out, and nobody logs onto it. Nobody signs up to it. And they say, I'm struggling, man, I can't get it. So because you're not connecting with people, right? At the end of the day, a better product is only better if you can deliver it better than the other person that's delivering it. So it's not just the product itself. At the end of the day, when you talk about confidence, it's also the human element. And you'll notice that every time I talk, it always comes back to the human element. It's about how you deliver the service side of things, because products in and of themselves require humans or people to connect with other people to sell them. A lot of great products sit in people's closets and don't sell, and so it's your delivery of that.
I was going to say the same thing. For me, if I had to think about the market at the time, I never would have done mine. I go with passion. So if you're passionate about what you believe in and about your product, and you think that you can do a great job at it, then just go for it. There was a time when I had written the manuscript, and I sat around and oh, what am I going to do next with this? And then I figured out, okay, let me get a list of 5 publishing companies that deal with children's books. And that's what I did, and I broke it down. And then I had to listen to some motivational tapes to get me there, because I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to write it and put it on my shelf. Little did I know that it would, I'd have my launch at Brown & Co. in 2016, and over 200 books had sold out, and that was the most that they've had at that time. Little did I know that I'd be creating an animated series with celebrity casts worth millions. So, you're passionate about what you believe in and what you do, just do it. Just do it. And if you need any encouragement, give me a call, and I'll be on the sideline cheering you on. And you build your confidence from that. I'm a lot more confident because I've learned from other people, as my stakeholder over there was my manager at one time, and I used to facilitate the new hire at Bank of Bermuda back in the day when we were all there. But I don't know much about diversity and inclusion. I'm learning about it, but she has a certification from Harvard. So I'm going to bring her into the fold and learn from her, and she's one of the best persons that I could ever work with. Yeah, it'll grow. It'll grow.
I have a slightly different viewpoint on it. I think that One of the things I've noticed in Bermuda for the young entrepreneurs that we've been had the opportunity to connect with is that a lot of people in Bermuda have decent ideas and some are great ideas, but that's not a great business. And what I mean by that, we're driven by research. The way we work, everything's research and it's finance. If you give me a business plan which looks like a business plan, but it's typically an idea written on paper, first thing I'm gonna look at is your mission statement, what you're trying to do, and then I'm gonna get straight to your numbers. If those two things can't convince me that this is viable, I'm not even gonna look at everything in between. But what really sells it is what's in between. How much research you have, and your research should be able to guide you to a point to give you a level of comfort to say this is worth going into at this time. Because some people might tell you that, oh, the economy is doing bad, but it depends what sector you're in. Some of the industries I'm in, when things are bad, it's great for us, right? So again, you have to really look at researching to the core what you're trying to get into, and then that should be able to give you an indicator or platform to get to a level where you can say this is worth getting into.
Neville, you were going to jump in with something as well, Enrico? No?
I think, yeah, all that, I agree with what everybody said, and especially the research piece. And I think that probably goes a little bit close to what I was going to say, in that certain industries are a lot easier to enter than others. Opening up a restaurant is kind of easy if you were, making cupcakes at home or something that people like them, and that can translate to a carbonite cart, and that can translate to a real cart or tent, and it can translate to a restaurant. Healthcare is a whole different animal. That takes a lot more. There's all these regulations, there's fiefdoms, there's all sorts of different things in healthcare that are not in restaurants that you have to deal with. And you've got to figure that path out. You've got to understand your resistance. You've got to understand that community. You've got to figure out what you don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well, sitting on the other end of the spectrum of idea through to financing. The challenge that we've always had with Bermuda is a small environment with a very small market. So the challenge is always going to be when you don't create a new idea, you create an idea that divides existing market share. So I'll give you a perfect example that we see a lot of people saying, "I'm open up a sandwich shop." You don't create new sandwich eaters. You just move somebody from one shop to another. So that's not necessarily an area where you'll see exponential growth. And translate that to hair salons, barbershops, gyms.
Nails.
So these are business combining Rico's idea. They're low barrier to entry and they're very saturated. So the only way that an idea like that can be more successful is if you move up what I call the value continuum. So it starts out, I'll give you a perfect example. So you buy a piece of 2x4, it probably costs $14 at Gorham's. You take that 2x4, you cut it into many planks, you form it into a chair, it's up the value chain, because now you can sell that chair for a couple of $100. You varnish it, you send it down, you get Beyonce to hand sign it, now it's a $2,000 chair, right? So the reason why I use it as an example, because I'll pick Rico, he's just started a burger shop. What's the difference? It's flame broiled, which is different from what you would get in
You tell all the secrets.
This is a secret in the front page of the newspaper.
I was going to say, how do you
It's well hidden.
How you know it's the truth?
Did he have
So the real point of it is, unless that idea has an element of a niche concept, and the Premier and I were talking about this before, it's another file sat on my desk with another idea that's the exact same. So if it's not unique and different, if it's not going to create a new market, then in a challenging economic time, it will not be successful because you're just going to divide market share.
Okay, yes, good evening. One of the big challenges I have is not necessarily with networking, because you can get out and know people and know where the jobs are, right?
Yep.
The biggest challenge that I find is when you go out to give them your product or service that you're trying to sell, they have always done business with particular people.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that the greatest challenge is not necessarily knowing the people, going out and selling your service or product, but it is trying to get them to do business with you. And I'm finding that one of the great barriers is competition. So whether we like it or not, the word competition should be well accepted, which should allow me into the door, right? And be able to bid on whatever I need, right? And I'm finding that people don't want to allow competition in. They want to do business with traditionally who they want to do it with, who they've always done it with, and that excludes me.
This was a speaking point, so I'm glad you asked that question. So
You didn't build about a mousetrap. You have no right to expect to walk into my restaurant after I've been doing business with Denny over here and buying his whatever it is, his flour that I use for all these years. It's been consistent in doing it. We've built a friendship and all this sort of stuff. You've got to figure out how to break that. Is it going to be price? Are you going to get it to me at 8 o'clock in the morning before my store opens, where he comes at 12 o'clock when I've got to run around for lunch? You have to figure out how to get me to buy it. You have no right to your entitlement that I should give you anything. You have to figure it out yourself.
it's an interesting concept. This is why it was a difficult panel to moderate.
Easy.
But it's
We
a
had
great,
this as
it's a
we
great
had it-
point.
We had it as a
good.
pre-conversation, right? And
Exactly.
It's you know, we're all going to sit here and coaches and talk about stuff. There's always going to be nepotism. There's always going to be clans and groups and all those types of things. Cartels. And
Came from Mexico, right?
and we're not talking about vibes. We're talking about cartel. You know what I mean? But you're always going to have those things. And the reality is that it's like, you ever watch Game of Thrones, right? There's always a Game of Thrones going on when it comes to business, right? And sometimes you have to be able to pull a power play on other people. And now what we really don't talk about often enough is that Bermuda's 21 square miles, 67,000 people, 500,000 tourists. Of that 67,000 people, maybe it's 25,000 consumers. You got international options for everyone. So everyone's buying everything online. Everyone's working with people that they like. They don't necessarily, yours might cost 20 cents less, but I like him more, so I'm going to buy from him. That's a reality. So sometimes you have to take what you have to people who don't care who you are, right? And maybe that might be another country, that might be another jurisdiction, that might be somewhere else, and then come back to this place with the power to twist people's arms and say, you have to choose me at this point,
That's
right? And so what I talked about with regards to, and this is on a small scale, talked about helping individuals that were better than me, right, or better than us in production. So Bermuda, it used to be a common saying that all of the big jobs get given to foreign photographers and foreign videographers and foreign production crews.
Right.
And that was the overriding sentiment when we guys kicked in. It's like, nope, you're not going to do any work for them because they always hire foreign people to do it. Nope, we're not going to be able to work for them because they only hire foreign people to do that. So we said, well, why don't we just try working for the foreign people, see what they do different. And then once we figure it out, just do that. Right? And then when we pitch it, it's like, well, you're saving on flights. So it's easier for us to do it. We're here. And we can do it the same way they can because we've learned everything that they can do. And so you use a power play to be able to get the thing that you want. It might not be immediate, and it might be a long-term game, but you're going to have to try to figure something out, you know?
Going to take one more.
I will jump into it.
I think you should make a
Mark,
good
it's
point.
not fair.
Can I
Yeah,
jump in?
maybe just answer the question real quick while Dante is shifting to give somebody the mic.
I would say one thing. When we actually launched our project, our company in the EU, we went to DHL first, and they didn't actually want to do business with us because they had established relationships on the back end who was building a software platform and managing it for them. So we went out to some of the smaller competitors, and we offered our services for basically nothing. So that forced our competitors to work with us, and we started to do very well, and then DHL came and called us. So that was a decision to lose to gain, right? When I first started out in Bermuda, when I came back to try to get into the Bermuda market, I wasn't taken very seriously. So me going overseas and working was a strategy to come back with that, right? So that changed your landscape when I came back with certain resources and certain success levels. So I watched how established players started to embrace me because of that. They had no choice, embrace or die. So that's a strategy. And then when you go down to an elementary level, like you got Mariko, if you talk to Mariko in the language he understands, he got that established relationship with Danny over there. But he said, I'm going to give it to you for free for 6 months, and this is going to be uptick in your bottom line.
Bye, Danny.
He might not say,
Bye, Danny.
right? You gotta know what makes it tick, but to be able to do that, you have to be able to research it. Like if you're looking at Mariko and you're saying, okay, how could I get in? Mariko is invested in this health business, so his money is spread over her, so he needs money. this is the time it's going to be looking for anything that could save in its core business because that's financing the other. So that's a strategic move. So you have to be savvy and play the Game of Thrones, you know, Peter Baelish, whoever you want to be, right? You gotta be able to convince that person that they cannot do without you, right? And I don't care how you do it. If you have to sit in front of the lure every day, I'm going to have to do that with clients if we're starting out like every single day. We went on Amazon Web Services. Most people in this room know about Amazon, but Amazon's main driving factor is AWS. They built a platform, right, which allow other enterprises and companies to build off of it to compete against the Microsofts of the world, and that's how they became the giant in the world. They said, you know what, we can't compete against Microsoft right now, so we're going to embrace everybody who wants to be Microsoft too, and we happen to be one of them. You see? Now look at Jeff Bezos, and I was looking at Bill Gates saying, who's smarter?
That's right.
One last thing. No matter what you might think of me, or whatever you think that I have, it's still not fair for me. This game is not fair.
No.
I'm not entitled to nothing. I can't walk into some places and just get what I want. It's not fair. You have to understand that it's going to be stacked against you, and you've got to work the other person under the table. Under the table.
That's a principle of life, right? You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate.
Yes.
All right, so TJ, far away.
Good evening. This question, I should say, is for the Premier, Mr. Premier. I just wanted to understand.
I was told that they started counting votes, sorry.
Yeah, so increase the excitement.
I just want to understand if there's anything in the future with regards to the fintech policies coming down. Is there going to be any room or maneuverability for peer-to-peer lending? Just to give an example, I was in China in March, and we were behind this 18-wheeler at a toll booth, wondering what was going on, and he pulled into a toll booth that didn't accept cash. He jumped out of the car, jumped out of the truck, went to our car where the driver was, gave him cash money, and the driver simply tapped his phone to his, exchanged currency. He ran to the lorry, paid for the toll, and off he went. So I just want to know if there's anything coming down in policy with regards to fintech, if that would be adaptable to Bermuda's culture, because it will help with regards to entrepreneurs, the economy, and the such.
Thank you, TJ, for the question. The short answer is yes, absolutely. But there's actually nothing right now that is preventing anyone from doing such an app right now or building such a thing. And so it's a question of how to receive those funds and how to transfer them. One of the things the government has said it's going to do is that it's going to use stable coins which have been from companies which are licensed to the Bermuda Monetary Authority, and to use them for the acceptance of payments of goods and services inside for government. And that will hopefully speed adoption throughout the rest of the market, because the government almost has to lead. And that's always the challenge with having a market the size Bermuda, that a lot of places, and this is the difference of approach of which I'm trying in some ways to push on the BEDC, is that in some instances the government just has to do it because the market is so small that it's not financially viable for others to do it themselves and expect to survive. However, if you can build something that lots of persons can use, so in the exact same way as we're talking about shared assets and all the rest, if you can build something that has all the bells and whistles that people can then use as a service to start their online businesses, to start accepting payments, to start accepting mobile payments and different things. That is the way I think is the best way to accelerate it, because for entrepreneurs inside of this economy, there are so many, and I don't want to talk about barriers because we're trying to knock some of those down, like, make it easier to register companies, make it easier to do certain things, but just on the plain and simple basis of, I'm going to talk about Neville again, open up a bank account at, his bank. Or, getting a merchant account or all the rest. The fact is that fintech is going to make a lot of those things easier. They're going to make a lot of those things quicker. They are going to, and it is going to transform the way in which money is transferred or value is transferred from place to place. And so in that particular concept, to answer your question, yes, but that's not going to prevent someone from building that right now. I mean, with your cars, you could have, someone to take use their mobile phone and pay right now. Like, you can do that right now. And so there is no actual barrier to that, but the fact is that we know from a government perspective that we almost have to lay it out, put it out there and say, here, we've built this, you go ahead and take this snippet and put it into your program, and then you'll be able to do it. And so we're going along that line to kind of make it easier for persons. We'll show how it can work, and then we'll basically say, here, you can use the same type of thing. And that's what's necessary in order for adoption. It's not necessarily going to work on an organic basis, because quite frankly, if it's going to cost you $5,000 to put in place, that $5,000 you may spend somewhere else, and you'll say, it's working perfectly fine the way it is working right now.
This has been an excellent exchange, so hopefully you've got some value out of it. I wanted to thank the panelists. Thank you, Nori. Thank you, Premier. Karen, Enrico, Talani. I think the experiences that you've had, the insights that you've been able to pass on to the audience has been fantastic. I know right after this we'll have a little bit of a networking session, but thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thanks.
Thank you.